Hi, I'm Amy. I'm from Lubrizol in the UK, based in Derby, and I work in the Global Communications as a business support placement student. So I'm originally from the Nottingham Trent University on the International Business course, and this is my colleague from the US.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brynn. I am based out of Wickliffe, Ohio, in the United States at Lubrizol's headquarters. I'm also on our global communications team, and I just transitioned from an intern status to full-time as a corporate communications specialist. I just graduated college or university in the US for me, so I'm just transitioning on. Hi, Amy.
So we're here today to talk to you through some tips that we have that has been requested from several different companies. So we're representing Lubrizol on our tips on what we think is good. The first section is interviews. So, Brynn, how would you research and prepare for an interview?
Yes, so that's a good question because I think both of us, to gain our internship at Lubrizol, we really had to research and prepare the company because there is such a talent pool that applies. So I remember looking back at my interview with Lubrizol, I just studied the company. So I went to their website, I looked at our social media channels, reviewing like what the company does, what our mission statement is, and kind of how that company culture is to see, would I even want to end up working here? So things I did was just studying. I also learned who was the people interviewing me. So I kind of studied them to see what their background was. And I took that information and I used it throughout my interview. So the people interviewing me that I studied, I got to plug in that, like I saw that they put a nice blog post on their LinkedIn account and I got to read it and I thought it was great. I got to highlight some of the things that Lubrizol put in their mission statement and kind of aligned it with my values. I just made sure I was plugging that information in my interview to show that I did study and I did some research about the company. Along with that is just preparing kind of common questions that you get asked in interviews. So Amy and I talked before this about how we kind of just Google searched some common interview questions, and just prepare for those because it shows that you can highlight your skills and your experiences that are relevant to the job. So that Amy, I have some questions for you. So when you were interviewing, is there anything that you remember you wish you would have prepared for, any kind of tips that you would like to give to students that are going to be starting to interview for internships?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the biggest things that you need to do in an interview is to just be really engaged. So nod along to the questions, nod along to what they're saying, just keep the eye contact, ask questions where you can, ask questions. That's the biggest thing that employees really like to see. They really like you to kind of, I don't know, like understand what they're saying and just understand what you want out of it. It always shows also the kind of skills that you have. So it shows that you're a good listener or that you'll take on instructions, which can then also be applied in the potential role that you're interviewing for. Okay, cool. So in an interview, what kind of questions would you expect to be asked?
I think you and I both have had this question before, and it's kind of a hard one because you don't know what to say. What's your biggest strength and weakness? I've always heard that question during a lot of interviews, and part of you don't want to answer that because you don't want to admit one of your weaknesses, what your weaknesses are. If I could give any advice, it'd probably be to study that question, to do some research on some good ways to answer that question without removing yourself from the candidate pool. Definitely don't admit that your biggest weakness is being late to work, things like that. But a really common answer that people give is like your biggest strength is your weakness, like being a perfectionist. That's a really common answer, and I would probably advise to go a different route with that. But everybody's strengths and weaknesses differ. It just more so comes to wordsmithing it and explaining, my biggest weakness is this, but I'm doing this to work on it. So kind of saying that to back yourself. But I would definitely research that question and see, what some interview websites say on that because everybody's differs. I think my biggest weakness is paying too close attention to detail. Sometimes I kind of want to make sure that I get things right, but I'm on a time crunch. So how I'm trying to fix that is by still giving it my all, but realizing that we need to move on and things need to go on and everything can't be absolutely perfect. So that would be my biggest weakness. But just making sure that you know how to answer that without taking yourself out. And then there's other times where we get questions like, tell me about a time when you had to use communication skills or led a team on a project or had a problem working with somebody and how you overcame it. This is something that you should definitely prepare for and have a good story to tell. Because that shows how you can adapt in the workplace. The toughest one, I think, for me was the strengths and weaknesses. But as long as you do your research and prepare and know what you're going to say, I think you'll be fine. But Amy, I would like you to explain to me some interview like formats that you've received. So different things like your interview experience with video or phone interviews, because during the state we're in right now, I'm sure a lot of places are only doing remote interviews over Skype or over different online platforms. So is there any tips that you have for those?
Yeah, definitely. So I did a phone interview for Lubrizol. I was the most nervous I've ever been for that interview because I was so aware that the person talking to me couldn't see me and couldn't see my body language, or they couldn't see me smiling to know that I'm engaged. So I think some of the best tips there would be to ensure that your tone of voice is engaging and that you, in your answers, you're kind of elaborating on what you're saying. So you don't give just kind of yes or no answers, because it kind of comes across like you're not interested, even if you are, because they can't see you. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that you need to be aware of. But also, in terms of other formats, there's things like assessment centres in the UK. So they sometimes give you like tasks to complete to see how you'd react to a certain situation. So they give you kind of tools and stuff to use, like paper or pens and or a presentation board that you can write on. So I think one of the biggest things I would say there is to always use them. They can say, oh, you can use them if you want, but always use them, because it's a sign that you're prepared to get up and present something, even though you've only had 5 minutes to prepare it. That you're willing to kind of use what's given to you and use everything to the best of your ability. So I think it just shows you the kind of skills and the kind of personality that you have really well in an interview.
So I think that wraps up our interview portion of the video. So if we could wrap things up and conclude everything, I would just say, prepare and do your research regarding the company and also interview questions, and you should be set and prepared to land it and get that job.